What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And today we're having a look at treasure map free-to-play characters. It's been about 6 months since my latest update to these types of tier lists, where we can have a look at the free-to-play units and see which ones are actually worth investing. And this is a good opportunity to do that, considering we're very close to the new anniversary period, and the anniversary will always bring in returning or new players, and those types of players need to know which characters they need to invest their blue tickets from, because you only get a finite amount of them unless if you continuously play like an absolute machine, but most people are not going to do that, so you'll have a relatively small pool of these blue tickets, and there's a lot of characters to choose from, but which ultimately are worth picking up, and that's what we're hoping to answer in this video today. Now, I do have a separate tier just for the supports, because not all the characters are good just for their actual effects. Some of them are okay in Pirate Rumble, but that's not the focus of this video. Some of them do have really useful supports, and we're going to be pointing those particular characters out. There's not many of them that have good supports, but there is a handful of them for sure. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, there are a lot of really bad treasure map characters, unfortunately. Like Mihawk, you're not using him. Whitebeard, I'd say, does have a bit of use. His damage does go through barriers, and can help you wave clear mob stages and stuff like that. Cavendish is, I guess, kind of account dependent. If you have a lot of good driven characters, you may want to invest in Cavendish, but to be honest, he's not the best. Gear 4 Luffy is really outdated. Ace is fine. Saba is okay. He's a self-procking conditional booster if you're running a cerebral team, actually pretty good. I'm really not a fan of the Zoro and Sanji, honestly. Kizaru is okay. Lin is pretty good. She has a very powerful special. I'd say she's probably A tier. If you're newer to the game and you don't have a lot of good characters on your account, her special just generates so much damage for you, and with the more modern captains being of 5 times multiplier or higher, when you have a special of Lin launched and then you have your pretty good captains these days, like her special alone will clear mob stages, which is really good, like mini boss stages, for example. Croc is terrible. Jack is actually pretty interesting because there's not too many characters in the game that remove damage immunity, and he is one of the characters that can do that. He's a damage dealing special, and it's a Jack character. He gets access to a couple of interesting supports. I think Jack is actually pretty good. Endeavor, I'd say, is in like the same level. He's pretty good for like helping you wave clear certain stages. I guess if you're trying to go through story mode still, having Endeavor maxed out makes story mode a breeze. You could just have him as your captain and just set it on auto and just clear all your story. So I guess if you're trying to go through that, then yeah, he's pretty nice for that. But outside of it, he's basically just a damage dealing unit. He doesn't really help that much. I think Shanks is actually pretty good. He's got a really nice special that removes barrier. It also removes another debuff, if I remember correctly. But the double special launch is good, generating matching slots, tap timing bonus damage. If you need newer characters on your account, he's a pretty good unit to have. Hancock is not very good. Law is okay, decent utility. He's a Law character, gets access to pretty good supports. Nami is pretty good, but her utility is a bit outdated due to the fact that it only removes like 3 turns of the debuffs, where in a lot of cases you'll need 5 turns or more. Nami does have okay supports, but not some of the best when you compare it to some of the other Straw Hats in the game. So Nami's fine. Kaido is just terrible. Dofi is terrible. Smoothie Oven, I guess, are okay, but a bit account dependent. They're more focused on Sai and Quick. I believe they boost Int as well with their orb boost, I think. But their switch effect is interesting, doing end of turn damage, which also can help you clear story mode. Weevil, I think, is actually very interesting to pick up if you don't have many characters on your account, due to the fact that he removes so many turns of attack down, and he also is just a 2 times attack booster to the crew. So attack boost and really good, powerful utility. It's nice to have, for sure. Shanks and Beckman aren't very good, to be honest. They're not great. Lucci is terrible, one of the worst ones, honestly. Akainu and Fuji, they see some play, they're okay. Garp, definitely do not invest in this unit, he's terrible. Smoker is okay, pretty good damage dealing unit. Blackbeard is not bad because he's actually got a good captain effect, and his special is not bad either. Like, I believe it's a 2 times attack and orb boost to Int. But the problem is that the turn you launch his special, like, you can't launch any other special, or you can only launch one other special during the turn you launch Blackbeard special, so you're restricted in that manner, but it helps you clear mini bosses and stuff. He's actually not terrible, and Blackbeard's got some okay supports. Hawkins is pretty bad, Nami's bad, Robin is kind of similar to the Nami, where she's got like good utility, but it only removes it by 3 turns, but Robin has some good supports. Drake is terrible. Vivi and... not Vivi, sorry. Vivi's next, though. But we've got Rebecca and Viola. They're okay. Not a bad unit, but they have a big problem that some of the older units have, where they have a special that removes Special Bind by 5 turns. But their crewmate ability only resists 3 turns of Special Bind. I know, it's stupid, it doesn't make any sense, and a lot of characters, you'd be surprised to see, a lot of characters actually have this problem. It is so dumb. Vivi is okay. I guess if you don't have many good attack boosting units in your account, then she's fine. Shirahoshi's pretty bad. Luffy's pretty decent. He's an orb boosting unit. He has utility as well, and it's a Luffy character, which is nice. Zorojiro, look, I personally think he's one of the best TM units in the game, because the wave clearing, like the max special at the start of the quest, double special launch, being able to just use him in almost any piece of content is really cool. And he also has an added bit of utility too. I think he's one of the best in the game, but I will concede that if you're newer to the game, Zorojiro is not going to help you clear a lot of content. You know, if you're trying to clear content to farm characters and stuff, Zoro, he's not going to help you in that manner. But if you're in like the mid to late game and you're trying to farm a lot of easier content really quickly to accumulate materials, Zoro is a really nice character to have. But I will say he's one of the best ones to pick up. He's really nice to have. And honestly, I think Reiju might be one of the other best characters, to be honest. Fantastic utility, orb change, self-proccing conditional boost. She has it all. The only real problem with Reiju is that she doesn't have a lot of good supports that can attach to her. That's her real downside, honestly. Nami and Sanji are actually pretty good. They're not bad, they just don't see that much play. But they do have a pretty good utility focused special, and they're an orb booster. Jinbei is actually very good utility and a color affinity special. Pudding is pretty bad. We've got Kid, who's also pretty bad. Garb, I think, is actually solid. He has the ability to give, he deals with the special reverse mechanics, full border matching slots, attack boosting special. Garb is just a really solid unit. Alright, so now we're getting into the more modern characters. We've got Komurasaki, she's bad. But then we've got Queen, he's also pretty bad. Luffy and Ace are actually not terrible. They're definitely usable. Maybe on this tier, because like they're gonna have a lot of overlap with additional like Luffy's and Aces, so it is what it is. Actually, you know, they probably do deserve to be here. They're very similar to this Luffy in the fact that like they've got utility and they're a boosting special, but they are only focused on Free Spirit and Shooter rather than this Luffy, which is like a rainbow boost. So it is what it is. Shiryu, this is a character that you want mainly for his support effect. Like his special is definitely usable, but the support is super good, attaching to any int character and remove poison when you're inflicted with it. So content that is focused around poison or poison slots, you may want to have this support, so make sure to keep that in mind. Next we've got Koala. I think she's actually not terrible. She's pretty good, focusing around Free Spirit and I think maybe Fighters as well, and a very unique special that negates you from receiving burn debuffs, I believe it is, or from like chain reduction debuffs. She's an interesting unit for sure, so focused around the mainly Free Spirit, so not a terrible unit. This Zoro is really good actually. He does have a lot of overlap with other Zoras, of course, but he's like one of the only units in the game that removes like 6 turns of Rainbow Shield. It's really, really nice to have. And he also provides an orb and attack boost for Sign Free Spirit. Like he's a really, really nice Zora character. Kaido is terrible. Do not worry about him. Stussy, like she's bad. She's just bad. Luffy is another support character, but to be honest, if we're talking about like normal units, he's probably in B tier. Luffy's pretty good. His support, it attaches to Yamato, Law, and Kid, and removes 1 turn of attack down when you're inflicted with it, which is pretty good. So again, just another attack down reducing support, but it is a Luffy character, so there is overlap at times, so you got to be careful, and it does only attach to very specific units, but Yamato doesn't have many supports, and attack down reducing supports for Kid and Law is also nice too, so a very, very good support. Robin is kind of low tier, she just doesn't really see much play. This Moria is pretty bad, doesn't really see any play. Hyogoro is actually surprisingly not bad. He is similar to Zoro. He removes 6 turns of a defensive effect. He removes 6 turns of defense up, which of course you can remove if you just reduce the enemy's defense, but of course if they've got immunity to that, Hyogoro is a good option, and he's a color affinity booster too. So Hyogoro is a very nice unit to have, especially if you're beginning into the game and you need these more utility focused specials, but this is a utility special that has damage included in it as well. Next is Tashigi, and she is good, but it's unfortunate that her utility effects are only 4 turns rather than 5. The other good thing about Toadskii though is that she's very useful for one of the Grand Voyages versus Captain Morgan. So that's the main piece of content where Toadskii is useful for. This Perispera has a fantastic support. I believe, is this the Striker one or the Cerebral one? I believe this is the Cerebral one. There's two Perisperas in the game that are very similar, that have a very similar support. One attaches to any Striker, one attaches to any Cerebral, and then when you use that character special, it either locks Striker slots, or it'll lock Cerebral slots. I believe this is the Striker one. I think this is the Striker one, which is good. Like any orb locking support, you want to like keep note of that because it's super useful to have. Conjurer is terrible. Ulti is not bad. Actually has a pretty good support. Probably want to put her in the support tier, to be honest. That color affinity support, which attaches to like any of the other Toby Ropos, is very nice. Sabo is really nice too. The good thing about Sabo is that he is a super tandem. He's a free-to-play super tandem, and he also has Chain Boundary, and he removes Paralysis by a bunch, and Sabo has okay supports too. So I think Sabo is actually a pretty top-tier unit. We've got Gecko Moria. This Moria is pretty good, to be honest. A lot better than the blue Moria that we talked about earlier. But yeah, there's a good utility special. Removing Special Bind being the big thing for Driven and Powerhouse. Then we got this Frankie. I think this Frankie honestly is like pretty top tier. Honestly, he's pretty close to being here. He is another unit, kind of like Hyogoro, removes 6 turns of defense up. His damage dealing special, but also if you have a chain lock, he buffs it. But if you don't, you actually get a chain lock from Frankie as well. Like he's just a fantastic character to have on your account. Super good. Next we got this Sanji, who I believe he actually removes poison as well, and he gives a buff to int characters. I believe it's a base attack boost. So Sanji's okay. This Chopper's very good though. Removing Special Bind, removes Burn, applies resistance down. Actually is probably in A tier, to be honest. He's super good. You could maybe put him in S tier. I could see an argument for him being in S tier. He's very good. Next is Trafalgar Law. He's kind of similar to Toadskii in a way, where he's actually very good for one of the Grand Voyages, albeit it is the newest Grand Voyage versus Arlong, and most people are not going to be able to clear it, but you know, that Law is very, very good for that if you have the optimal team set up. He's a very, very nice unit to have, but it's hard to find a way to make him work. But again, he's useful for a Grand Voyage, so you may want to keep it in the back of your mind in the future. We're nearly at the end here. Next, we have this Blue Linlin. Now, I will say this Blue Linlin is probably an S tier unit. If you have a Driven or Powerhouse Captain, you just get all of her buffs activated. You get rid of block slots. You get a Chain Locker, removing 2 key defensive effects. I think it's Threshold and % damage reduction, or it might be defense up by 5 turns. Just a very solid unit. So again, you know, these units that provide utility effects and boosting effects, but this unit also does some slot change as well. Very, very nice to have if you're a new player or a returning player coming to the game. This Blue Linlin is super, super good. Who's Who is terrible. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, at the time, they were releasing a lot of these Driven focus units, but then they released this guy who was Int, which fit with the theming at the time, but he's focused on Powerhouse. So, yeah, Who's Who is not very good. Wiper is not bad. Honestly, he's not terrible. I'm going to put him in B tier. You could make an argument for A tier. I think I'll leave him at A tier because he does have the ability to self-proc his special to auto-launch, which is actually really cool. But I don't see too many situations where he's going to see play. He's focusing on boosting Shooter and Free Spirit, so Shooter receiving a lot of good support recently, which is good. Izo is fine. This is another character very similar to these guys that remove these defensive effects by 6 turns, but the additional effects that surround Izo are just not that good. I believe he does actually change block slots as well, but he does like a self-health cut, and the other effects that he has are just not that useful. But being able to remove 6 turns of Threshold is very, very good. So we're nearing the end here. We have Fujitora, who is a super type character, and he's not bad. He does rely on switching into the captain position, but I feel like the special and the super type of this unit are just a little underpowered compared to some of the more recent characters that we've actually had. And the last character is going to be Bedge. Bedge is really good. I think he's an S tier unit, to be honest. His special is like legitimately crazy, and the fact that he boosts Shooter and Driven, you could legit, like, if you don't have many good Shooter or Driven units to use, as a captain at least, like, this guy is a very good captain, and when you have him as a captain and you use his special, you'll get all of the beneficial effects, because you need a Shooter or a Driven to get everything. You can have a Shooter captain to get half of the buffs, and then you can get the other half from Driven, like a full border slots, orb boost, and then the slot change that he has goes through block slots as well. He removes paralysis by 6, but then if you got a shooter captain, I think he removes bind, and if you got a driven captain, he locks your slots. So this unit just does so much. He's got utility, orb change, orb boost, fantastic special. So I feel very comfortable with saying that these are probably going to be the most used treasure map characters, at least in most normal content moving forward, that will help most new or beginner players get into the game. These are very, very good specials to have. The characters in A tier are super solid, being able to remove enemy gimmicks, but also provide buffs to the crew. And then you've got B tier, which are generically good units or very useful in other random pieces of content. C tier for niche usages. D tier, these characters are just bad and you probably shouldn't invest in them too much. And then these are some characters you want to look out for some very, very good support effects. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up from me. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and if you guys did enjoy it, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.